Hello everyone. Today we have a new topic, that is theft, as defined under section 378 of the Indian Penal Code, that falls in the chapter entitled of offences against property, which fall in the chapter 17 of the Indian Penal Code. Chapter 17, that is start from section 378 to section 462 of the Indian Penal Code. As per section 378, it says, whoever intending to take dishonestly any movable property out of possession of any person without that person's consent, move that property in order to such taking is commit the theft. So we have five ingredients attached to this particular section. Number one, whoever intending to take dishonestly. Whoever means the wrongdoer intending to take dishonestly. That means he is having a dishonest intention. Any movable property. So under this section, the property should be a movable property, it should not be an immovable property. So the offense of theft would only be applicable to the movable property. The person will be charged for the offense of theft for the movable property and not for immovable property out of the possession of any person. So it is an offense against possession and not offense ownership. So it says out of possession of any person without that person consent. If the movable property in the person's possession, and if it has been taken without the person's consent, then it shall be called as theft. Moves that property in order to such taking. So the moving of property is mandatory, is said to commit theft. So what does it mean? We have five ingredients. Number one, whoever taking dishonestly any movable property out of possession of any person without that person's consent, move that property in order to such taking. Now you must keep in mind that for committing any offense there must be actus reus and mens rea. So here in this particular section we have actus reus called moves that property in order to such taking. The last line of this particular section of this particular provision moves that property in order to such taking, that is called actus reus. And the mens rea, whoever intending to take dishonestly, that is mens rea. So as we have already studied, actus reus and mens rea will constitute the offense. Then what about the other components of this particular section, like movable property from the possession of the another person without without the person's consent? It is the state of affairs. It is called state of affairs. The ingredients which fall in between mens rea and actus reus, that any movable property out of possession of any person without person's consent, that is called state of affairs. Whereas whoever intending to take dishonestly, that is intention, and moves that property in order to such taking, that is called actus reus. Under this section, five explanations are attached to it. We will study one by one, and it is one of the longest section where 16 illustration has been attached. Illustration A, B, C, D, and up to illustration P. So therefore, the longest illustration are attached to section 378 of the Indian Penal Code. We will study one by one in due course of time. The first point of this particular section is whoever intending to take dishonestly. So intention must be a dishonest intention. Intention of the wrongdoer must be a dishonest intention at the time of committing of the offense of theft. Now the question is what we call dishonest intention. The term dishonestly has been defined under section 24 of the Indian Penal Code, which says Whoever does anything with the intention of causing wrongful gain to one person or wrongful loss to another person is said to do that thing dishonestly. What does it mean? Wrongful gain to one person or wrongful loss to other person. Either wrongful gain to one person or wrongful loss to other person is called the person is doing the thing dishonestly. Now the question is what we call wrongful gain and what we call wrongful loss. The term wrongful gain and wrongful loss has been defined under section 23 of the Indian Penal Code. As per section 23 of the Indian Penal Code, wrongful gain is gain by unlawful means. If someone is gaining something by unlawful means, a property to which the person gaining is not legally entitled. So the person gaining the property by wrongful means, by application of wrongful means, and the person gaining the things wrongfully is not legally entitled for such property, that is called wrongful gain. Now come to the point what we call wrongful loss. Wrongful loss as per section 23, wrongful loss is the loss by unlawful means of property to which the person losing it legally entitled. So wrongful loss is obtained by application of wrongful means to which the person was legally entitled. Someone just lose the things wrongfully and therefore he was entitled for the possession over the property, but he lost the property and therefore it is called wrongful loss just because of it was done by application of wrongful means. Now the third heading of this particular section is gaining wrongfully and losing wrongfully. It says a person is said to gain wrongfully when such person retains wrongfully. So if someone is gaining some property and if he retains the property wrongfully means by application of wrongful means, as well as when such person acquires wrongfully. So when he retains wrongfully and acquires wrongfully, it is called the person is gaining wrongfully. Again, point number two, a person is said to lose wrongfully when such person is wrongfully kept out of any property. That means the person was entitled for the property, he was lawful owner of the property, lawful possessor of the property, but he was kept out of the property, as well as when such person is wrongfully deprived of his property. When he has been deprived out of his property, then it is called the person is losing wrongfully. See the chart attached to this particular slide, that is if something is happened wrongfully, then of course there either may be wrongful gain or wrongful loss as per section 23. In case of wrongful gain, the person was not legally entitled, but in case of wrongful loss, the person was legally entitled. And in case of wrongful gain, the person was retaining wrongfully. He retains the property wrongfully as well as he acquires the property wrongfully. And in case of wrongful loss, the person was entitled for the keeping of the property and he was kept out of his property, or he has been deprived from his property, and this all has been done by application of wrongful means. It all has been done by the application of wrongful means, and this is all about the dishonest intention. If someone is doing something with dishonest intention as per clause 1 of section 378, then it is called the person is doing something with the dishonest intention. So at the time of committing offense of theft, the person must do something with the dishonest intention as defined under section 24 and 23 of the Indian Penal Code. Now the next ingredient of this particular section is movable property. It should not be an immovable property for application of section 378. For charging a person under section 378, the property should be a movable property. The question is what we call movable property. See section 22 of the Indian Penal Code that defines the term movable property. It says the word movable property are intended to include corporeal property of every description. So you must keep in mind it is a corporeal property of every description except land and things attached to earth or permanently fastened to anything which is attached to earth. So what does it mean? What we understood, that movable property is basically a corporeal property of every description. Corporeal property means which has corpus, which is having figure, which is having some shape, which we can touch, which we can feel. That is called a corporeal property. Incorporeal property, the property which we cannot see, which we cannot touch, but we can feel. For example, intellectual property, even a patent, copyright. These are the incorporeal property which we cannot touch, which we cannot feel. But corporeal property we can touch, we can feel. And also there can be a shape of the corporeal property. But it says movable property excludes the term land. Land cannot be called as movable property, rather it is a immovable property. And the things attached to earth, for example, the house is basically attached to her earth, and therefore it is called a immovable property. Or things permanently fastened to the earth, for example, the fan, the window, the doors, that all are attached to earth, that all are fastened to the earth, and therefore it is called as immovable property, even though the fan is moving. For example, we have illustration A up for section 378, which says A cuts down a tree on Jet's ground with the intention of dishonestly taking the tree out of Jet's possession without Jet's consent. Here, as soon as A has severed the tree in order to such taking, A has committed the offense of theft. What does it mean? When the tree was attached to earth, then that means it is a immovable property, and therefore it cannot be a subject matter of theft. But as soon as the tree was severed from the earth, now it become a movable property, and therefore it is a subject matter of theft, and therefore it was done with dishonest intention. In order to such taking, he was cutting the tree without the jet consent, and therefore it shall amount to an offense of theft as soon as the tree is severed from the earth. Similarly, you must see explanation 1 and explanation 4 of this particular section. Explanation 1, which says a thing so long as it is attached to earth not being movable property, as we have already discussed, is not the subject of theft, but it becomes capable of being the subject of theft as soon as it is severed from the earth. Similarly, we have explanation number 4 of section 378, which says a person who by any means causes any animal to move is said to move that animal, and to move everything which is consequence of the motion so cause is moved by that animal. And therefore, for which you must read explanation B of this particular section. Come to the point, the next ingredient of this particular section is any mobile property out of possession of any person. So now the question is what we call possession. As you must keep in mind, in this particular section the term ownership is not used, so it is an offense against possession and not against ownership. The point is what we call possession. Possession is basically, in possession basically two things are there. Number one, corpus, and number two, animus. Here the corpus means the body, the structure that we can touch it. There can be a shape, and therefore it is called a corporeal property. That is called a immovable property because it moves. So there must be something that exists. There must be anything that exists, and therefore there must be corpus. Then only we can call it there is a possession over it of someone. Animus here means intention to possess. If someone is having no intention to possess, then again there cannot be an offense of theft. What does it mean? There must be a movable property. That property must be a corporeal property. That means it has some shape. It should move from one place to another, and also the person must have an intention to possess over the property. Then only we can call it there is a possession over the property. Otherwise, suppose if the person is having no intention to possess a movable property, then there cannot be an offense of theft. For example, suppose a person throws his ring and someone find it. Then when such person find it cannot be held liable for the offense of theft because the person who throws the ring abandoned the possession over the ring because he don't have any intention to possess, and therefore it cannot be called as offense of theft. Come to another aspect of this particular section is it is an offense with respect to possession and not against ownership, as given in the section itself, that out of possession of any person and not out of ownership of any person. Let us take an example. Suppose A is having a movable property in his hand, and it was taken by B without A's consent out of possession of A, and therefore it was done with the dishonest intention, and therefore B has committed an offense of theft against A. Now it is in possession of B, and suppose by the same process C has taken, and again by the same process D has taken, and similarly E has taken the property from the D, and therefore E will be held liable with respect to D for the offense of theft because it was in the possession of D. Similarly D will be liable with respect to C. Similarly, C will be liable with respect to B, and B will be held liable with respect to A because it is not an offense against ownership, but it is an offense against possession. And therefore we cannot call that if suppose A is the owner of the property, and therefore B, C, D, E all will be held liable with respect to A. No, we can't say that B, C, D and E will be held liable with respect to A. Rather, E will be liable with respect to D, D will be liable with respect to C, and C will be liable with respect to B because it is an offense against possession. Now, the question is whether the person can be held liable for stealing his own property. This is a question, that whether a person will be held liable for stealing his own property because it is not an offense against ownership. Let us take an example. Suppose you carried your own clothes from the tailor shop. In this situation, you have committed the offense of theft. You cannot take the plea that you are not responsible because the clothes belong to you. The reason is your intention is to deprive him from the remuneration. Similarly, you must go through illustration number J and illustration number K of this particular section. So this is an offense with respect to possession and not with respect to ownership. The point is, if suppose the property in the possession of the servant, in the possession of clerk, or in the possession of wife, then whether they shall be responsible for the offense of theft or not. As per section 27 of the Indian Penal Code, when property is in the possession of a person's wife, clerk, or servant on account of that person, it is in that person's possession within the meaning of this code. So, when the property is in the possession of servant, wife, or clerk, then it shall be deemed that it is in the possession of that persons only and not in the possession of the servant, wife, or clerk. So, what does it mean? Even a wife can be held liable for the offense of theft, a servant can be held liable for the offense of theft, and a clerk can be held liable for the offense of theft by virtue of section 27 of the Indian Penal Code. As you know, in Hindu law, that husband and wife called as one unit, but they do not constitute a single unit for the purposes of the criminal law. For the purpose of criminal law, they are the two distinct unit, and wife may be held liable for the offense of theft for moving a property without the consent of the husband. Similarly, Stridhan is a property belongs to the husband, belongs to the woman, the wife exclusively, and therefore husband may be held liable for the offense of theft of Stridhan. Another crucial point of this particular section, that means about possession, is the distinction between the possession and custody. Whether possession and custody both are the same or two distinct elements, two distinct things. A person is said to be in possession of a thing when he can deal with that property as the owner to the exclusion of others. Keep in mind, a person is said to be in the possession of a thing when he can deal with the property as the owner, and thereby he excludes other. No one can interfere into his possessory right. But in case of custody, the property is in the custody of such person when he cannot deal with as owner. Keep it for sake of another. He keeps the property for the sake of another, and therefore he cannot deal with as owner. So what are the points? The point is, in case of possession, he can deal with as owner, and in case of custody, he cannot deal with as owner. Like the property is in the custody of the servant, the property is in the custody of the clerk, the property is in the custody of the wife. They are not the in the possession over the property, and therefore they can be held responsible for the offense of theft. For example, the servant entrusted with the ornament, and it was in the custody of the servant, but it is in the possession of the owner. And if he takes the property dishonestly and run away with the property, then the servant has committed the offense of theft, and he shall be held liable under this particular section. Another important aspect of this particular section is without that person's consent. So he has taken the movable property without the person's consent. The point is what we call consent. As we know, the consent has been defined under section 90 of the Indian Penal Code. So in order to constitute the offense of theft, he must have taken the property without the consent of another. As we have explanation number 5 of this particular section, that is, the consent mentioned in the definition may be express or implied. So what does it mean? There may be either express consent or implied consent, and may be given either by the person in possession or by any person having for that purpose authority, either express or implied. So what does it mean? The consent may be given by the person who is in the possession over the property, or the person who is having authority to do so. If the property has been entrusted to someone and he has been given an authority also to give the consent to someone else, then there can be a valid consent, and that consent either may be express consent or implied consent. Let us take an example, illustration number M of this particular section, that says A, being on friendly terms with Z, goes into Z's library in Z's absence and takes away a book without Jet's express consent for the purpose merely of reading it and with the intention of returning it. So here what does it mean? He goes into Jet library, and there was absence of Jet, and he took the book for the purpose of reading it, and there was an intention to return it. Here it is probable that A may have conceived that he had the intention of Z implied consent to use Z's book. If this was an impression, then A has committed no theft. Here the impression was that he is having implied consent of Z, and therefore he has not committed the offense of theft. But it may amount to theft when his intention was to remove the property and not to return it back. Then in such a situation, it will be called as the offense of theft. Now, the another ingredient of this particular section is moves that property in order to such taking. What does it mean? It is an act of reus under section 378. So there must be dishonest moving of that property. If it was honest moving of the property, then again it cannot be offense of theft. Separation will constitute the moving and therefore the offense of theft. If as soon as the tree is severed from the severed from the earth, now it will constitute the subject matter of theft, and therefore it is an offense of theft. Law does not require that how much distance it travel. Even a millimeter or even a micrometer, nanometer displacement may amount to an offense of theft, because it may constitute under the definition of moving. It is not necessary that it is carried out of owner's reach, even though it was displaced just 1 centimeter or just 1 millimeter or one tenth of the millimeter, and still it is in the reach of the owner, still it shall amount to an offense of theft. For example, A went inside the bedroom of B, and he saw the ring over the bed sheet, and he kept the ring just backside of the bed sheet, under the bed sheet. Then of course there is displacement, that is very small displacement, that is very negligible displacement, but still it is a displacement, and still it is in the owner's reach, but still it will constitute the offense of theft, because there is displacement, there is dishonest removal of the property, and therefore it is an offense of theft. Let us just reverse the situation. In the same example, if there is wet mud, gili mitti, and if someone put wet mud over the ring, here there is no displacement, and therefore there cannot be an offense of theft. As we have studied explanation number 1, that as soon as the tree is severed from the earth, as soon as the tree is separated from the earth, it becomes the subject matter of theft. So moving may constitute the offense of theft, but standing timber is not the subject matter of theft. The point is, what are the modes of moving? What are the modes of moving, for which we have illustration number 3 of section 371, of section 378. It says a person is said to cause a thing to move by removing an obstacle. This is the first mode of the moving, by removing an obstacle by which prevented it from moving, or by separating it. Number 2, from any other things, as well as by actually moving. So we have three modes of separation. Number 1, by actual moving. Number 2, by separating it from any other thing. And number 3, by removing any other obstacle which prevented it from moving. These are the three modes of the moving. Again, taking need not be a permanent. Even a slightest taking, a temporary removal of office file may constitute an offense of theft. For example, someone is a clerk in an office, and he just temporarily removed the office file and shown it to someone for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or 2 minutes. It will amount to an offense of theft. Now come to some important judgments on this point. We have a case called Avtar Singh versus State of Punjab. It was decided by the Supreme Court of India in the year 1965. So in this case, he was prosecuted for the stealing electricity. As you know, in the village or in some town, it happens. Therefore, there is a policy of grounded electricity. So it was contended that electricity is not a movable property as per section 22 of the Indian Penal Code, because electricity cannot be regarded as the corporeal property. Electricity cannot be regarded as the corporeal property, and therefore it is not a movable property and not the subject matter of theft. Ultimately, the lower court and the high court convicted him for the offense of theft of the electricity. Actually, he was charged under the Electricity Act as well as under section 378 of the Indian Penal Code. But his contention was that electricity is not a movable property, and therefore charge under section 378 is not acceptable. is not culpable. So therefore the matter ultimately reached to the Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court of India quashed the charges against him. The judgment of the High Court was quashed by the Supreme Court of India that electricity cannot be termed as mobile property under section 22 of the Indian Penal Code, and therefore he was absolved from the responsibility. You must keep in mind that gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, methane, ethane, argon, neon, there are many gases. So when they are in space, it is called incorporeal property because we cannot touch it, we cannot see it, and therefore it is not a subject matter of theft. But when it kept into the cylinder, it become a corporeal property because it acquires a shape. You know, when gas is kept into cylinder, then it acquires a shape, and therefore it become a corporeal property, and now it become the subject matter of theft. So cooking gas, water passing through the pipeline, is the subject matter of theft. Fixing a pipe just before the meter to avoid the payment of gas pipeline is a theft. Human body, whether it is subject matter of theft, whether dead or alive, no, human body is not a subject matter of theft except mummies or dead bodies which preserve in a scientific institution. If a dead body is preserved in the scientific institution, if there is theft, then of course it is a theft. But dead body in general or living body in general is not the subject matter of theft. We have another case called KN Mehra versus State of Rajasthan. It is also called aeroplane theft case. This case belongs to the Indian Air Force Academy, Jodhpur. In this case, what happened? There was an allegation against the petitioner that he, along with the Phillips, one person called Phillips, has stolen the plane from the Indian Air Force Academy, Jodhpur. The trial court and the High Court convicted the accused persons. They landed the plane in the Pakistan because of bad weather condition. Their contention before the court was that without dishonest intention, how offense of theft can be constituted. Their contention was there was no dishonest intention because for the dishonest intention there must be wrongful gain or wrongful loss. But there is no wrongful gain and no wrongful loss because they come along with plane and they landed the plane due to bad weather. The state contended that they were having dishonest intention because they carried the plane much before the timing of departure of the plane. The accused argument was they put back the plane, therefore they cannot be held responsible. Here, the academy was deprived of the property from the time being and therefore accused caused wrongful loss. I emphasize that the accused caused the wrongful loss because they deprived the property for some time, for the time being, and therefore their intention was dishonest intention, and therefore they committed the offense of theft. This is all about the offense of theft as defined under section 378. As far as examples are concerned, you must read out all the examples and illustration as well as the explanation attached to section 378. Thank you very much.